Saturday, September 12, 2015. This is Mercedes Diesel Guy, and this is my 1983 Mercedes 240 Diesel. Okay, I guess time for a start of today's update. As usual, I did work in the evening during the week. And I don't exactly recall where I last left off with you, but I think I had more or less finished up installing all the brake components, and I think I was trying to bleed the clutch hydraulics because I had installed a new clutch slave cylinder and a new clutch master cylinder. The old ones I think were probably original to the car, and when I took them out they really did show evidence of leakage, at least starting, so neither one was probably long for this world. So, brand new components in there, and I think I used quality parts, but I absolutely could not get the clutch line bled. And I tried a couple of different things over the next few evenings, and could not get the line bled. I did my due diligence, I researched on the forums, through Google, and people having a very hard time bleeding these clutch lines. It's a very common problem, and more than one person threw in the towel and took it to a mechanic, who then also said, oh yeah, I got it done, but it was really difficult. So, give me a moment and let me show you something I learned. Okay, this here is actually the old clutch master cylinder, which mounts under the dashboard, and I'm showing you this because it's difficult to get a camera under there and show you anything. It's difficult for me to see anything under there. But basically, what I learned, and this is through trial and error, I actually had the new clutch master cylinder back out of the car. What I learned was even the slightest bit of pressure here on the push rod was shutting off the fluid flow. What I did was I took it out and I tried to pass air through the clutch master cylinder, and with the rod fully extended I could pass air through it no problem at all. But even a little bit of pressure severely restricted the air, and if you push the plunger in just a little bit even, and not even all the way, because you can see there's a lot of travel on that, even just a little bit of compression shut off the flow. So my reasoning was, well, what if I remount the clutch master cylinder, but I do not bolt in the push rod? Basically, I bolt the body of the cylinder in place, I hook up the hydraulic line here, and see if I can bleed it that way. Well, it turns out, at least for me, that was correct. Bolted into the car, but left the push rod dangling, and I was able to bleed the line clear in maybe 10-15 seconds. It was very easy. So that is my helpful hint to any of you having problems bleeding the clutch line in old Mercedes. Whether or not you're replacing it with a new one, my recommendation is just unbolt the push rod, let that hang free, and I think that'll greatly help you pass fluid through the system. Now, there may be other issues. If you're just bleeding the line but using all the old parts, your bleed screw on the slave cylinder might actually be plugged up with gunk, and you might not be able to get anything into the system. So, anyhow, that's today's helpful hint. So, I'm back to working on the car today, picking up from where I left off with the hydraulics. And I really am nearing the end of this project. So my first task for today is I'm actually going to bolt some wheels up to the rear of the car. And before I go any further, I feel it's probably best to test the brake and clutch hydraulics. And the best way for me to do that would be to bolt some wheels on the rear, get in the car, start it up, and very quickly run it through the gears and hit the brakes. Now, if I can run it through the gears and the clutch behaves properly and the wheels stop. That's great. At that point, I shut the car off and just, give a brief look around the system for any hydraulic leaks. Because there's a lot of connections in the system, all the parts are new. I'm pretty sure I have everything tightened down properly, but, I can never quite tell until I look at it. So, that'll be my first task for today, at which point I will have to take stock of what needs to be done and figure out what the next project is. I'm not sure if I'm going to be looking under the hood or mounting up the exhaust. I kind of have to figure out what's the best next thing to do, so I'll update you at the end of the day. Okay, well, here's a little update. I know I didn't show you anything on video, but you're just going to kind of have to take my word at this point. What I first did was I bolted some rear wheels onto the car, and then I took everything off the car, and especially I took everything out of the engine compartment that was likely to fall into a bad place. I installed the battery, got in the car, it started right up, and I was able to run the car through all gears, and I was able to stop the car. So I think probably what I'm actually going to do now is take a little time to pick up tools and junk and maybe move some old boxes out of the garage, just give myself a little more space to work. I'm moving on now, and I will update you with more near the end of the day. Okay, well, I actually haven't gotten any work done since my last update. I spent the last few hours actually cleaning out the garage, and as you can probably see around the car in there, this still qualifies as an absolute mess, and I get that. But what I have done is I've taken maybe 5 or 6 large bags of trash out of here, and piles of boxes. So the benefit is I can actually walk around the car now. Once this car is done and I can drive it out of the garage, I'm going to do a real clean out in here. But for now, this is about the best I can do. So now I'm going to resume working. And I think the 2 things I'm going to concentrate on right now are I do need to check the brake lights, because I'm not sure if they're working, and if they're not, then what I need to do is possibly replace the brake light switch, and I do have a new one of those. And also, when I had the car started before, and I've noticed this before in the past, I absolutely cannot get the car to rev as high as it should, and I think that's due to a couple of factors, possibly dirty fuel filters, but also there are a couple of plastic pieces in the accelerator linkage that are broken. Those pieces are no longer available, but people have reported good progress, faking those pieces by just inserting some fuel line there. So I'm going to take a look at those things and then see what else I can get done today. Okay, I'm at my stopping point for the day, and I have made some progress. And, getting junk out of the garage took a few hours. Then I actually started the car and checked a couple of things. First off, I've never been able to get the engine to full throttle, and I suspected that it was mostly because of a missing broken pair of plastic bushings in the accelerator linkage, and replacing those, or at least rigging something, helped, but didn't help anywhere near enough. Eventually I figured out that the throttle was hitting a limit stop, and it really shouldn't, and it was hitting the limit stop, but it was not fully activating the injection pump. So I realized that one of the accelerator linkage rods was actually too short. So I adjusted it, I lengthened it, and I seem to be getting, great throttle response out of the car now. Once I actually get it out of the garage and do some more testing, I may need to do further adjustments, but the adjustment I did helped greatly. Then I checked the brake lights. They've never been working. First I started the car, checked them, they didn't come on. Then I went to the fuse box, and I realized that everything else on that circuit was working, so it wasn't the fuse. Then I actually decided to test the brake light switch. Now, I still haven't gotten the old one out. It's jammed in there really good, but what I did was I disconnected the electrical connector from the old brake light switch, and on this car it's actually it's an electromechanical switch. Here is the new one, and what happens is when the brake pedal is released, the switch is held in. When you press the brake pedal, this switch actually expands, and that's what actually creates the electrical contact. So what I did was, like I said, I disconnected the electrical connector from the switch that's in the car, hooked it up to this one, and just turned the key to the accessory position, and just by playing with the plunger here I saw that the brake lights were working just fine. So this is definitely the bad component. So tomorrow the first thing I'm going to do, and hopefully it won't be the only thing tomorrow, is get the old brake light switch out and install this new one. So this is Mercedes Diesel Guy. Thanks for watching.